Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Judge Chat Yu-Gi-Oh podcast. I'm back again with my boy Hatch. How's it going, bruh? How's it hanging?
I'm doing all right. I got back from LA. We'll talk about that a little bit. I'm doing great tonight.
Awesome. How'd your stream go? Talk about it. Just give us the rundown.
I actually didn't end up streaming today because I got
you didn't
work like 3 hours late, and that just didn't give me enough time to set up a stream.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, if you want to catch any future streams, where can they find it?
Oh, we're doing that bit already. All right,
we're going in early. That's just how it is, man.
Going in early. Hell yeah! It is twitch.tv/h4tch_ch. I repeat one more time: twitch.tv/h4tch_ch.
Alrighty. All right. Well, let's get into it. So you did go to LA. You went to YCS 250. You went to LA. Obviously, the plane tickets to London and Bogota were probably a little bit more expensive, so we kept it. We kept it domestic.
To do with the fact that I don't have a passport right now. that might influence my decision a little bit too.
Very fair. Very fair. So go ahead and tell us, just give us the rundown. The 10-minute movie kind of thing. Just tell us everything that went on, all the highlights, everything good. I'm sure everyone would be happy to hear.
Probably do that a bit quicker, because my weekend was actually not quite as interesting as you would think.
All right.
Unless I just want to talk about how fucking awful LAX is. That's gotta be the worst airport of all time. No contest. So I flew in overnight, both on the way there and then to come back, which was not my best decision. So I got into LA at 1 a.m. Friday morning, and then I putzed around for 4 hours in the airport, maybe 5 hours before calling an Uber, getting into the city. And eventually I met with some of my friends up there, and that was cool. And then day zero, I didn't really do anything besides I just hunted for high rarity Edison cards all day zero.
Right.
I did pick up my second ulti dandelion, which is nice. And then an ulti German drill warrior, which is based as fuck. His name is Boar Krieger. Isn't that such a good name, Boar Krieger?
That's hilarious, dude. Very clean.
And then throughout the weekend, I kept picking up other stuff too, like Champion Back Bestiary. On a whim, I just bought a Runic core because I figured at some point I might actually want to play a Runic deck. I look at these results, and Runic Naturia, even if it didn't win any events, it's looking pretty good. Pack makes it look really good too.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Beast and Barkion are hell of a cards, right?
Very strong cards, and the fact that the deck can also it also has really easy lines into cards like Baron to Fleur and shit like that is really good.
Yeah, I mean, if you, obviously it's a little bit of, matchup dependent, you have to read what your opponent's playing, all that kind of stuff, but if you end up winning the die roll, and you can go into either Beast, against the branded matchup, and in part Kashtira, if you go into Beast, and then against Labyrinth, if you go into it against Traptrix, go into Barkion, you're just kind of sitting pretty with a smile on your face. You're just I've probably won this all. It's hard to break those boards where it's just they make the one that you can't deal with.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then going second in deck's very confident because it turns out having 16 different cards in your deck that it's either instant fusion or 1-for-1 removal is pretty damn good. But yeah, so that's all I did day zero. My tournament run was not the best. It wasn't terrible by any means, but it went I didn't make day two. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. But we talked about it before you went. You were kind of prepared not to make day two.
Yeah. Although I will say I was doing a lot better than I thought I would. Most notably, I did beat every Kashtira I played against minus one of them, which I just I didn't even fumble that game. I was making an omelet, and then I grabbed the handle of the pan, and I didn't realize the handle of the pan was over the flame, and on reaction, I just threw it out the window. That's how that game went. It was really bad.
That's fair.
It also made me realize that I hope they ban Kashtira Birth, but we're gonna get into that later.
For sure.
No, that game was interesting though, because I actually got to play against Barrett Keys, who you might know. he did a lot more like back in ye olden days of Yu-Gi-Oh. I think he was I remember him first for topping. I think it was the 150th actually with Necroz.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and then the other interesting part of that match was I was also sitting diagonally from Jesse Cotton, which I did make sure to tell him that the vlog videos are my favorite, even though I don't do it as well as his other videos.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. The only experience I have with high profile, I mean, if you want to say Yu-Gi-Oh players, is other than our local people, is in a remote dual YCS. I actually got to play against DZ in a
that's pretty cool.
In a Yu-Gi-Oh Day event. Yeah. He was playing Sword Soul, I was playing Fluffles, and I got my shit just totally packed in, dude. It was not fun.
I don't know how Fluffles beats Sword Soul.
We win the die roll and manage to scythe block through like 12 hand traps. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, if you stick it, you stick it, right?
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, and I could be very wrong, but I believe that was back when Sword Soul still had Protoss.
Oh, so this was like December 2020.
Yeah, around that time. It was around that time. So it was Sword Soul was a lot stronger of a deck. It's weird how just losing one card made the deck so less oppressive.
I kind of just forgot about Protoss.
I think a lot of people did. I think like unless you're playing Master Duel where it's not on the list, you just like forgot that it existed. It's kind of like VFD where we're all just like, yeah, VFD. That was awful. It was like just a fever dream.
Yeah, it was just like 3 months. It's like, all right, we're past it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so besides that game, I did beat every Kosh tier I played against, which made me realize that as long as you're like playing, as long as like you're playing Book of Eclipse and like maybe Kaiju's in main, you actually is like you kind of dog on every Kosh tier player. It does not matter.
Yeah, you know, Kaiju's in main is something that I've been thinking more and more about for my budget duelist series, because I'm noticing not only is stuff like the Shangri eras and the Arise Heart problematic, but also since Branded has pivoted more to just turboing out Dragoon, it's a really difficult card to deal with. Like it's the year of our Lord 2023, and we still can't out Dragoon.
I think there's some other cards we can talk about, but that I did also feel like we're pretty good in Cash here, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah. So, what deck did you play? You haven't mentioned this yet. I think you mentioned it in the last podcast, but for those who missed it,
was it the tier list video?
I believe so. Yeah.
I played Punk Therion, and the deck actually felt like pretty good, except for the 2 rounds that I ended up losing. It ended up being the reason I dropped day 1, where I looked at my hand and it was like Regulus, Colosseum, Lilia, Lasia. And I was like, I see. I understand. I pass.
Yep.
It literally happened like 5 times in the span of 7 rounds, which mathematically is probably correct, but it felt more often than it should have been.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been keeping up with like the innovation on Trap Tricks since the structure deck, but people are going for a Therion Trap Tricks list, which abuses Aromatherapy Jasmine and like Rika Queen Strenna and all that stuff. And I think it is the most the biggest pile of like idiocy ever, because you're introducing 4 at minimum main deck bricks, or not necessarily Garnets, but more like Top Katomborgs, where it and that's in a deck that you need to see at least 2 cards for you to actually go full combo. It's just, in my opinion, it's very not a good idea. Because you need to play, like, in the list, you're playing, you're playing Lily, you're playing Regulus, you're playing Colosseum, and you're also playing I believe it's an insect. It's a plant. It's the plant generator monster, which... Yeah,
the Lily. Or no, the generator.
Yep, the plant generator, yeah. I don't know what it is, but I've seen the lists, and I've seen, combo videos for it, and it's like, it looks powerful, but it's also just ass. But anyway, that's getting a little too into my personal gripes.
That's all good.
But yeah, Punk Therion. So, has the list changed much from when that was, the ubiquitous best deck in the room, or is it kind of just still doing the same stuff?
Well, I don't even know if it was ever the best deck in the room, to be honest. I felt like even I thought it was. I mean, in Nationals format, it was one of the scarier decks because of the Calamity play, but it is what it is. It's definitely changed a lot. No Hulk, and also no Chaos Ruler does change a lot of things, but at the same time, Dioblantis, Dragon Drive, and Sargas are all incredibly good cards.
Kind of somehow all does the exact same thing.
I feel like it actually does more outside of exactly the Calamity line.
Yeah.
Or if you're based like me and going for the Halkin to Heat Soul play, it also you can't do that anymore. But other than that, it does like a lot more.
So I'm not saying that Hulk was a healthy card for the game, but part of me kind of misses it. Because it's always like, oh, I need a Link 2 that like gets me an extra card. It's like, oh, it's Hulk. Oh, right, Hulk is gone. You know, it's like I miss some of the things you could do with Hulk, but I think overall Hulk being gone is probably correct.
I get where you're coming from, but also at the same time, I also way more miss all of the tutor monsters that had to be banned because it was a card.
That's fair.
Like, OCG just banned Glow Up Bulb, and if that comes to the TCG, I'm gonna fucking pop off. Glow Up Bulb is one of my favorite cards of all time, dude.
That's fair.
I'm gonna be jamming that in any deck I'm playing. That's not true. I'd probably play it in like Tier Element.
Yeah, you can definitely play it in Tier Element. I think Zombies is also a very big contender for Glow Up Bulb. Yeah.
You can't. You can dump it off Dioblantis. That actually might be.
Oh yeah, it's a plant. Yeah, shit, that is true. Because I know the play was. I know it's an. Yeah,
you can dump a plant or insect.
Yeah, that's right. No, because I know the play was. Some people were like, oh, you can dump Spore. The only problem is you don't have a plant in the graveyard to banish with Spore.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Without like prior setup at least.
Yeah, but no Glow Bulb would be based. Isn't Dioblantis a world premiere card on our end? So TCG has it, but OCG doesn't?
I'm pretty sure it's a TCG premiere, yeah. So it's just not a thing that the OCG has right now. Right now, about Punk Theory though, it's definitely changed a lot.
Yeah.
I still feel like pretty confident about where we place that on our tier list, where it's like middle of. I would say it was like probably. Did we say it was like lower end of tier 1.5, higher tier 2?
I believe so. Yeah.
I remember putting it like around there somewhere, and I feel about right with that. It felt good every time I didn't draw 4 Therion cards.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. It has a really solid grind game. I think its biggest problem is it's just like it's a little too honest. It's not like Runic where you're drawing 5 cards every 2 turns or whatever. And it's also not like Kashtira where you're summoning like a literal like meta warping like centralizing boss monster. It's just like, oh, I have a negate and a bounce, and then like if my hand's really good, I can throw like another negate in Baron on top of that, and that's still like good.
Yeah,
but it's nothing that other decks for the most part aren't doing outside of doing that alongside its form of the grind game, which I think is still like worth something. But
that's fair.
I don't know.
That's fair. So you so obviously day 0, you said you picked up a bunch of like cool cards, did a lot of trading, a lot of all that kind of stuff. Day 1, you did all right, but not good enough to get into day 2. So I'm assuming day 2, did you just kind of hang out, or did you play a lot of side events? What'd you do then?
Kind of both. I did a couple of Edison pods.
Yeah.
I ate shit game 1 of my first Edison pod, and I got second in the other one. So not another. I did not get my second Light and Darkness playmat. I'll try next time at Nats.
That's fair.
And then for the rest of the day, I just hung out with some other friends. We wanted to do the token creator, but we just didn't get the time because the line was like literally 4 hours long by the time it was like 11:30, 12 in the morning.
Yeah, like, okay, I totally understand, like, the token creators are cool, and, like, as somebody who collects the actual official tokens, it's, like, really cool that they let you get tokens of, like, yourself or, like, with your favorite characters, all that kind of stuff. But it's so polarizing because, like, oh, the tokens with you are really cool, but anytime you get a token in a tournament pack, or like people were so pissed when they got a token in Magnificent Mavens. It's hilarious. It's just like the double standards are just too funny for me.
To be fair with the token creator, you're like traveling out all the way. It's like
It is like a memento. It is something you get to like look back on and say, "Oh, look at me! I went to a YCS with all my buddies and everything like that." Yeah, I totally recognize it's cool, but it's just like it's just funny to me as somebody who like when I open an OTS pack and I see the token, especially the first one in a new OTS pack, I am like actually thrilled. So I know I'm weird. One day, whenever I complete my token collection, and that does include the original Ojama tokens, I will probably do a video showing it off, everything like that. Especially for like the Ojama Black token, if I don't just go ahead and buy a graded one, I might actually just go off and send it to be graded, just because it's like, look at me, I have an Ojama token.
Godspeed, soldier. That's all I can say.
I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm not that far off from completing the collection.
But
I
at
have.
the same time, those Ojama tokens are like, I think, hundreds of dollars now, right?
So the green and the yellow are about $50 a piece, and the black is like, it is a couple $100. It's like $300 or $400 to get a mid condition one. That's why I'm like, maybe I should just splurge and just buy a graded one, so that way I know what I'm getting.
That's not the worst idea.
Yeah, but believe it or not, the reprints. So it's like kind of funny because the reprints of the Ojama tokens are actually about the same price. They're all about $30.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's very funny. But anyway, yeah, I'm actually not that far off from completing my collection. I have all the structure deck tokens. I think I recently completed all of the OTS tokens. And then I'm missing like a couple from, random sets here and there. Because like there's like a span of like 2 years where tokens were actually in core sets and people hated them and just threw them away. So they're actually really hard to find now. Like the Raviel Lord of Phantasm token is like $10 for no reason. Because everyone threw them away back in like 2006 or whatever.
God, but genuinely a different time.
Yeah. Very funny. Anyway, so, it sounds like you had a pretty fun time, How would you rate your experience?
If I was able to have like an actual sleep schedule, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But it was still a solid like 8.5, 9 out of 10.
That's fair. Fair.
LA, like the city itself, like I talk shit about LAX, but also LA as a city, not gonna lie,
it's one of the cities
I've ever been to.
It is one of the cities in America.
It is one of the cities in the United States of America.
Oh, yeah. So I've not been to LA, but I have gone to San Francisco, and that was awful. Just downright awful. The second you got off of the street that was like all the touristy stuff in the hotels, it was very, very gross, disgusting, litter everywhere, just you think of it, it was there.
That's not quite the problem I have with LA, although there definitely were like, I think I got haggled by like 7 homeless people in total over the course of like 3 days, which
that sounds about right.
Something. But no, the real problem I have is like the streets, just like the city design just makes no goddamn sense. I was using like Google Maps half the time to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think Google Maps took me down like 5 different paths throughout those 3 days to get to the venue, when it was always just like a straight 5-minute walk from my hotel. It was awful.
That does sound awful.
Yeah.
But anyways, so you played a little bit at the YCS. You probably got to walk around, see what people were playing. So
yeah,
what do you think about the current format? How do you think it stands? I know you were a tier limit truther. So how do you compare this?
To be honest with you. I do stand by the fact that I think overall I would rather keep playing Tier 0 format compared to what is happening right now. But I will say after this weekend, I think the format is more fun and interesting than I gave it credit for.
Yeah.
Now that Kashtira isn't just like this dumbass like zone lock and macro and like stupid bullshit deck, and it's just like, alright, we're just gonna make like a better Zodiac Trident and see if you can out it. Now that it's like doing that for the most part, I feel like it's a lot more of a fair and interesting and dynamic matchup. My real only black spot with the format, like I can objectively point out, is that there still are a lot of like floodgate-like effects. Like a
Yeah.
Rise Heart in general just like makes me see red. I'll be honest. Branded Expulsion I think is really stupid. Um, the fact that we still have to deal with cards like Dimensional Barrier, Anti-Spell Fragrance, Dimension Shifter, it just makes like it makes some games just like literal blowouts depending on the matchup, and I just don't think that makes for good Yu-Gi-Oh. And you know, say what we will about Tier Zero, it just didn't really have that problem. Like tier limit could play because all the decks that played D Shifter were bad, so you could just wait a turn in tier limit, or even try to do like something in tier limit to like stay alive for that turn, and then just like do everything on the next turn anyways, and it was just like fine.
Yeah, like in the tier 0 tier limit format, I think the only decks that like held a candle to the Shizu tier was like obviously Fluandries. Fluandries was the big one. Honestly, Madolche was kind of there. Like it was the third or maybe like the in my opinion, right? Because like when you saw Madolche, like you were like, oh, it's Madolche, it's whatever, guys just having fun. And then when you just get blown out of the fucking water by Queen Tiara Masu, it's hilarious, dude. It's that deck felt really funny. That deck felt incredibly strong with the Ishizu cards, with the Vernisylph cards, because everything just gelled together almost perfectly.
That's fair. I don't know.
That being said, like it just didn't see a lot of experimentation because tier limits.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you kind of talked about like, you know, a rise, like Branded Expulsion. A lot of people are calling for that card to be banned because, you know, it does a lot of very degenerate things with, you know, it was doing Ra's Disciple before, but now it's doing Gimmick Puppet.
There's this dumbass Gimmick Puppet card printed in like 2012. Yeah.
Yep, there's Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. I think people are even doing some weird things with like some other random cards against a branded deck this weekend. They branded Expulsioned a Jinzo to their side of the field to stop my Traptrix deck, but they said the reason they were doing that was to stop Labyrinth, because they lost to Labyrinth like 5 games in a row.
That is really funny. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and if Denko Sekka could be special summoned, you'd do the same thing with Denko Sekka. That would be crazy. But probably, anyway, yeah. So what are some other cards that you think maybe don't necessarily deserve the axe, but you want to see on the list?
Like if I was like John Konami, I was making my dream ban list right now. Yeah. Pretty much every card I mentioned. Well, okay. Right. I actually don't think a Rise Heart needs a ban. I just think like if you limit 2 or 3 of the Kashtira cards, and the deck goes from like pretty inconsistent to like literally just fucking like limit. Like all limited Dragon Lures levels consistency.
Yeah, like I think you give the Shanger era a limit so that, you know, they can't do the 9 zone lock. The 3 is like fair. And then maybe you either limit Fenrir. I don't want them to limit Fenrir because I think it's a very interesting card in other decks. Yeah, so I think the Theosis, giving it kind of the E-Tele treatment, is probably the best thing you could do. To both keep the deck playable, keep the Kashtira cards playable in other decks, like I was saying before, but also just making it to where the deck seems more fair. You know, you really have to resolve Unicorn, otherwise you're just not playing the game, really. Also, it would force them to play a lot of the worse Kashtira cards, you know, because I think the current ratios, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 3 Fenrir, 3 Unicorn, 1 to 2 Kashtira Scareclaw, and tier limits Kashtira, and then you maybe play an Ogre. So limiting the Theosis to 3 requires you to play like Ogres, Scareclaw, Kashtiras, all that kind of stuff. It makes you play more of the worst ones. So, but that's my opinion on Kashtira.
I think that's a fair way to do it. Mine is just like I said, if you just like hit the consistency, then that deck is just like unplayable. So my opinion would be limit Planet, limit Unicorn, limit Birth. Easy.
That's fair. What's your sprite opinion? Because I know a lot of people are kind of like, well, this is going to be this deck's just kind of more fun than everything else, so they're picking it up, and I can foresee it in like 2 to 3 weeks. Everyone's gonna be like, okay, sprite's annoying. What can we hit?
So I think Sprite, out of all of like the competitive, like definitive tier 1 decks, is definitely like the most fair deck overall. I honestly, ideally, I don't even want to touch Sprite. I think it's like a cool, like it's not my type of deck necessarily, but I think it's a cool deck. It's interesting. The games are dynamic. It's not oppressive in any way. I would rather just like not hit it, to be honest. That said, I don't know if you saw, but they did do we did get like the product information for this year's tins.
Yeah.
And it just did not mention Power of the Elements, which means that they're probably like banning blue and jet. Like it's just like Jover for the deck. You know?
Yeah, that's now.
Like...
I have a very interesting opinion on Sprite, and that is I want them to just straight up ban either red or carrot, because in my opinion, having searchable main deck monster and spell and trap negates is a little ridiculous. There's not a lot of decks that have that capacity. Because, like, for Sprite, you know, they do play into Nibiru relatively hard, except when they can get to red. And I think that I just don't like the fact that, you know, they have those main deck outs. But it's what I would prefer, just giving them, like, more fragility rather than hurting their consistency or their end boards. Just making the deck more fragile to things like Lightning Storm or Nibiru or, you know, Dark Hole, just stuff like that, you know?
I can kind of see where you're coming from, but like I said, like you know, even if it is like pretty powerful, I still don't like now that Elf's banned, it's just like, you know.
Yeah, you have to have like a god hand. You have to have like a god hand to get to something like Double Toad and stuff like that.
Well, you can't even Double Toad anymore because Elf's banned.
No, like some people are actually just hard making two Toad in Sprite. I have not seen the combos, but I've seen the deck lists, and they have like.
I don't know how you make Double Toad. That's just wild.
It's some way. I'm not gonna pretend to know because I saw the list and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and then they explained the combo to me and my mind went completely blank. With like,
I just like don't receive it.
Yeah, just like in one ear out the other. It's history class all over again.
Yeah, I mean, even if Double Toad hypothetically is like really strong, at this point, if you're doing that, then you're just like you're just like the better player. I don't want to say.
Yeah. So yeah, Sprite is a pretty fair deck. What the other tier 1 deck we listed was Labyrinth. Labyrinth had a decent conversion from top 64 to top like 16 or top 8 or whatever.
Whenever it did top, it did make it fairly deep, but it actually had a pretty awful conversion from Swiss into top 64, which is kind of a big deal.
Now, I would say that might be more or less the people who are playing it that got that deep are just insane players. And they know the deck much better than some of the people in Swiss who kind of bubbled or bottomed out.
Yeah. I also think a huge reason why it's fallen off so hard is I think pretty much everyone is unanimously agreed main deck evenly is like the thing this format.
Yeah.
And that's Labyrinth can play around evenly, and it can play around it pretty well actually if you're making the call on it. But you're not going to make the call on it game 1 a lot of the time.
No. Because you have judgments, and then if you're a based gamer like me, you'll play 7 Tools the Bandit.
All right, you're just built different. I don't know what to tell you, bro.
Bro, budget duelists be budgeting. I don't know what to tell you.
Not even like Wiretap?
I was trying to find Wiretap. I couldn't find him.
You couldn't find Wiretap.
Yeah, no. I would rather pay 1,000 life points, I guess.
Just make sure. Yeah, so they can't draw it again. That's why.
Yeah, totally. It's like, what? Like, Dark Bribe's just worse, because then they can just draw into another evenly, you know? At least 7 Tools is a 1-for-1 trade, you know? Anyway.
But, yeah, I don't know. I still think in my heart of hearts that Labyrinth is a tier 1 deck, and I still think, like, in the right hands, it is the best deck in the game. But it does have a lot to prove now, is the problem.
Yeah.
I think people have also kind of realized that I think Labyrinth also just has like a pretty tough time against runic cards, which doesn't bode favorably for the upcoming format, because if they just like destroy Kashtira, then Sprite and Branded and runic cards are all that's like really left.
Yeah, that's fair. Can I be completely honest? The biggest thing that surprised me was of the top 64 in YCS LA, 3% were Fluandries. That to me is mind-boggling.
I'm not that surprised, honestly.
I am.
We talked about it. We talked about it before. I stand by the fact that I think the deck is still like good enough to do something.
Oh yeah, M-Pen's a hell of a card. M-Pen is a hell of a card.
Apex Avion is really sick as like repeatable, recurring like form of negation.
Being able to tribute
Ryza,
your opponent's cards with unexplored winds is really funny.
That's a big one. Mega Ryza is also a really, really sick interrupt.
It is, yeah.
The deck still has a lot of tools to play like an actual control plan.
Mm-hmm.
It just loses. You know what? It's Kashtira without a Rise Art. That's really
true.
What it is.
Also, they don't really care about their stuff being banished. So if you have a tournament run that is just out of like 14, 15 rounds of Swiss, if you played against 13 Kashtira decks, you are probably sitting pretty. Yeah. It's just when you run into things like Branded, Mathmech, Drytron, Naturia, Labyrinth, that's when it starts getting difficult.
Yeah. And looking at like the Flunder list from LA, I can look at these and say like, yeah, this seems like a really good deck. Not just into Kashtira, but it seems okay into like basically every other deck. Like, you don't care about the Arise Heart banish because all of your monsters banish themselves face up anyways.
Yeah.
You don't care about runic cards because all your monsters add themselves back, and one of them just like adds back a banished one. Is it Sri?
Yeah. No, it's
it's
Toucan. Toucan adds back a banished.
Labyrinth is like maybe okay. You can tribute over their silver castles for your tribute summons. That's like not terrible. No, I think besides Kashtira, I don't think it has like a necessarily like positive matchup against any deck. But if it does have a positive matchup with Kashtira, and on paper I think it does. No, I can definitely see how it won a lot of enough games to make it in the top 4.
Yeah,
I can definitely see that.
Which is I just think it's surprising because like I said, I played Fluandries during the Ishizu Tier Limit format because it was the cheaper deck, and I played it. I actually found it enjoyable because, like you're saying, with what is essentially a Tier 0 format where there's only one real playable deck, you can actually alter your combo lines to be very interactive in a different way than what is expected. And it was actually kind of fun to play Fluandries against Ishizu Tier Limits. That being said, just the direction the deck is taken, I just like I said in the tier list video, I just don't know if I agree with it. And it's like after seeing it do well, I might bring it to a couple locals the way that I think it should be played just to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because this is actually very interesting. Yeah.
To be fair, also these topping lists do play it the way we're talking about. You're not playing the stupid water barrier statue with small world. That's just like code.
Yeah.
You're just writing off the back of the interactions, the actual Flunder cards, with like your good tribute summons, and then just like some other generic control tools. Like I think
now,
the top 4 list was on
Yeah, I've got the top 4 list from LA, and interestingly enough, so there's a couple things that are interesting about this, right? So they're playing Thrust, right? And Thrust is an insane card, right? He has Upstart Goblin, he has Tactics, he has Raigeki, he has Jack in the Hand, and he has Terraforming. But the interesting thing to me is he's only playing Pot of Duality. He's not playing Pot of Prosperity. And I can understand it in the sense, like, if you get to get off Thrust, it's either you get to Rhoda for whatever bird you want, because Jack in the Hand is the weirdest card, right? It reads like, oh, you get to pick 3 cards and it's random. No, it's just Rhoda. It's just Rhoda. If there's a deck that can play it, it's just Rhoda. Because normally there isn't just one card that you need. Normally it's either will do it. And yeah, it's very funny. But he's also got the Tactics in case he wants to draw 2 or steal a monster. He's got the Raigeki in case he wants to clear a board. But he is actually main decking a copy of Snowl, which, I mean, I've always thought Snowl is a very funny card. I've always thought it was like, it's cute. It really is just cute, but it's not good.
Yeah,
so
I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably not play that. I'd
Yeah.
probably not play.
He's maining 3 imperm, 3 evenly.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, especially with thrust, yeah, it's 100% correct.
I also feel like only one Featherstorm is just like inherently incorrect on the side.
Well, the theory is like I think the theory is with thrust, you essentially have 3 copies.
Thrust, yeah. But it's also a card that you just want to like draw when you're going first. Because when you draw it, it reads win the game since it's VFD, a banned card.
Yeah, it is crazy, especially if you really want to go a little deep and play I believe it's Harpy Perfumer, which is a card you can search off Robina, and then you can just normal summon off the M-Pen. That way, Featherstorm is a hand trap, which they can't, really snipe it out with something like Night Beam. I know Night Beam in the year of our Lord 2023 doesn't sound that much of a threat, but it could happen.
It could hypothetically happen. Yeah.
So yeah,
I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Just looking through Top Cut.
Yeah, let's move on from Flandries. I could spend 30 minutes just talking about Flu, and we got a lot to cover. So
I don't know if they have. Okay, I did find the list. There was this really. So you know that 60-card Scareclaw deck that you've been messing around with?
Yeah, I did see the Scareclaw list. I don't know if you could hear the air quotes, but yeah, it's. So the way that I did see the deck profile and the air quotes combo video for it, and it's emulating the based pile decks, but it's doing more Cyber's combo, and it's utilizing the fact that Scareclaw Lightheart is an insane Link 1.
It is a really good Link.
Basically, the way that the guy described it is you have 10 ways to get to 4 Mudskipper, and 4 Mudskipper is essentially 4 cards, right? Because it gets you the Link for Lightheart. Lightheart gets you the Field Spell, which then gets you the Reichheart, but it also gets you the... and then Reichheart gets you any Scareclaw spell trap you want, but it also gets you Parallel Exceed. And then Parallel Exceed gets you another Parallel Exceed, so it's essentially whatever way you want to look at it, 4 Mudskipper is just insane card advantage. Just burning your normal summon on that, yeah.
It's okay.
But it also just did a lot of very interesting stuff. It was playing a lot of cards, and I'll be honest, I don't think it was a Scareclaw list. I think it was more of a kind of sort of pile deck. But that being said, it's a very interesting concept, and I would be interested to see more in-depth information on it before I make a concrete decision. This is good, this is bad.
Yeah. Some other notable stuff. A tier deck did make it in the top 32.
Yes,
I'm not surprised by it. I'll say that much. I'm not surprised tier made it top 32. I think the deck's still good.
Yeah.
And the list seemed pretty solid from what I can remember. And the other deck I want to talk about, it didn't make top 64, but Aaron Furman was right on the bubble. He went X3 with Dark World. I can't find his list right now, but that confirms my belief that after him and Simon He played the deck, that it's real. No, I think there's something there. Probably Kashtira probably has to leave the format first before it's really doing anything, but once that happens, not gonna lie, it might be a Nationals deck for me. I might be
interesting, very interesting. So so we could talk all day about the deck lists that top the YCS and everything, but that's already been done. So
yeah,
I wanted to move into kind of more of a final segment of today's episode, and that was the very unfortunate happenstance that very, very many players encountered, and that is disqualification from the tournament for one reason or the other. Now I have been advised that we don't really want to give any opinions about whether or not it's right or wrong, anything like that, and we're not going to. All we're going to do is cover basically we're going to be going over the Konami policy documents because unbeknownst to a lot of players, they were updated. They contain a lot of new information that you have to be aware of, and a lot of people went to the YCS not knowing this information, and it was unfortunately they got caught doing things that either they weren't aware of being against Konami's policy, or they just were unfortunately, they were in a bad situation, wrong place, wrong time, all that kind of stuff. So getting on into it. So for those of you who don't know, the Konami policy documents are publicly available to any player or any person who wants to read them on Konami's website. And by signing up for a official sanctioned Konami event, you are agreeing that you have read the documents, you understand them, and that you will abide by Konami's policies for appropriate tournament play. This is something that a lot of players know, but players who are new to the game, maybe they were introduced to the game through Master Duel and they wanted to actually try paper, they didn't know about this, and they got into the situation where the policy was enacted and they weren't able to do anything about it. So going over some of the things that you're not allowed to do, just very basic. It's called collusion. Obviously Tristan and I both know about it. It's when you agree to the decision of a match without playing the game. So you either roll dice for it, you flip a coin for it, you just say, hey, I have to go, I'm going to give you the win. Anything like that. Without playing cards, you agree who's going to win for one reason or the other. Now, obviously, there's extenuating circumstances. You get a phone call, like your mom's in the hospital, you need to be there right away. Totally fine. However, if it's like, hey, I'm just gonna give you the win and I'll buy the playmat off you, totally not okay. And that kind of leads into the other thing, which is Tristan, you obviously did a lot of trading during the YCS, so maybe you want to talk about what's okay and what's not.
Yeah, so if you're at a tier 2 or higher event, which basically means an OTS or I think it applies to OTS championships.
Yes.
But like a regional or a YCS or anything of that, do not buy cards from other players at the venue. That is bad. That's not good. It's not good, folks.
Yeah, so this is
reason for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
So this is something that was very recently updated in Konami's policy. So it didn't used to be this specific, but now it is. So this is why it's important that you bring it up, you talk about it, and you know about it. You actually read the policy to understand it. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So the gist of it is the reason why it's in the policy document in the first place, which I think is we should clear that up too. When you go to an event and you start playing a regional or a YCS, there's gonna be a bunch of vendors at the side of the building that they're selling cards and other product, right? And they're there both to provide a service and to make money. And that service is making sure that everyone who needs a certain card for the weekend can get that card. Or if you're like me and you're a fucking Edison 80, that you can find your ulti dandelions and champion back bestiaries, right? The problem is, I think it's fair to also say this part. Trading for cards in the trading card game,
totally fine.
You can always trade for cards.
Totally
not
fine.
a problem.
It's just you cannot exchange any form of currency for any Yu-Gi-Oh product. So if you want to go buy a Gatorade off somebody because you see they have a bunch of Gatorade in their car, totally fine.
Yeah.
But if you're buying any Yu-Gi-Oh product, you can't do it at the venue. It is very clear in the Konami policy documents that you cannot. I could actually pull them up and quote it, but you cannot be purchasing from a non-licensed vendor. At the venue.
Now historically the biggest workaround was, if you're at a YCS and you happen to run into someone who said you're looking for a card, and someone says, hey, I have this card. Hey, I have, you're looking for for a tournament pack Bookamoons, super rare Bookamoons. $400 a copy. You're looking for those. I happen to have a tournament pack Bookamoon. Would you want to buy it off me? And be like, okay, sure. But you'd say that very quietly, and then you would go outside of the hall, to the outside of the venue, and then do the transaction there. Now, frowned upon, absolutely. but not technically against the policy, at least to my knowledge, not until the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. However, they did update the policy documents, and I have the policy pulled up here, and I will be reading it verbatim. So, to quote Konami's policy documents, right? It labels that a person attending a sanctioned event that prohibits the buying or selling of items with the intent to buy and or sell items with other people rather than an appropriate licensed vendor is warranted a UC, unsportsmanlike conduct, severe penalty. Now, according to the policy documents, a UC severe and along with this a UC cheating are the most serious penalties that can be given. The infractions do not have to take place at a tournament. So let's say, you were talking about doing exactly what we're talking about. You attend an event with the intent to sell your, tournament pack Book of Moons. And that was at a previous event. You attend another event, you talk about it, a judge overhears it, they decide to take issue with it, and they bring it up. That is kind of fair game for this infraction to take place. Along with this, a person does not have to currently be enrolled in the tournament to warrant this the penalty. And
I think that's the big change that caught a lot of people off guard too.
Let's say you're not even going to play, you're going to there to support your friends, but you brought your binder, and somebody they see your Book of Moon, they say, hey, I'll give you $100 for it. It's unfortunately not allowed.
And that's like a big thing too, because before it only really applied, or it was only really enforced to people who were there to actually play in the tournament in some respect. Whether it was the main event or doing it in the side events. Historically, if someone showed up with $7,000 worth of cards and they were just trading, and then later on and they left the venue and then did selling and buying deals outside of the venue there, then completely fine.
There's not really anything Konami can do to enforce that. If they could, TCG player would not be in business.
But the moment any of that enters the venue without one of the vendors, without any vendor being involved there, and a judge catches wind of it, completely just not okay. And that also extends to and I think you might have seen something about this. It also extends to even stuff they find online about you, right?
It does extend to social media. So I'm assuming you're talking about Yassine656, his video on it.
I think he made a video about it. I was just talking about the actual post, because I only knew about the post, to be honest.
So if you guys are interested in the story more in depth, Yassine656 did make a video discussing it. Go check it out, support him. But long story short, a person made a post on, I believe it was Facebook, requesting, and his intention was he was actually trying to contact vendors that would be at the YCS in order to procure cards. However, the post was ambiguous, and because it was ambiguous, it fell under Konami's policy of a UC severe.
And now we can go back and forth all day on, was there intent?
Is this entrapment? Is it right or wrong? All that stuff. But we're not going to do that. That's not our place to decide. What we're here to do as judges is we're reading the policy and we're trying to break it down simply so that you guys can understand it, so you don't get in trouble either because somebody, coerces you into doing something, or you just simply don't know. And like I said earlier, by participating in a Konami sanctioned event, you need to have read this and be familiar with it.
Exactly.
But as we all know, Yu-Gi-Oh players don't read, so that's where we're getting some content out of it.
We're here to explain the thing that people just refuse to read, which is fair because it's a 50-page long document, I think.
Yep, I feel everyone in our judge group has read them, but I often feel like I'm one of the few people who actually goes back through and rereads them frequently, especially the infractions document. I reread them once a month at minimum, just because I want it.
I think I only reread them whenever they're is like an update to it. So it's
Yeah.
like, all right, what do I have to know now?
Yeah. But that's probably because I have a very poor memory. So I need lots of reinforcement. But that's just me as a person. So essentially, I kind of lost my train of thought. But basically, yeah, don't attend a sanctioned event, and don't talk about, you know, you want to physically sell these items. You know, don't do it. It goes against Konami's policy. If you want to sell cards, sell them on TCG Player. Just do not do it at a venue, because you
sell them
can
to the
be.
vendors. That's what I did.
That's also
I sold
another
literally
thing.
like all of my cards besides like a playset of Lubellion and a couple OTS that I wasn't aware was actually within the cap that they couldn't buy and sell.
Yeah. So I remember my train of thought. So I wanted to explain for people what a UC severe entails. Because it just says on sportsmanlike conduct severe disqualification. So what a UC severe entails is that you'll be disqualified from the event and you will be removed from the tournament venue. That'll be the first point of action that gets taken place. You can then be, depending on the head judge's discretion, placed on the Konami suspended players list. Now, depending on the severity of the infraction, the suspension can last anywhere from 1 year to, I believe, currently the longest suspended is like 5 years. Something like that, something very, very long time. And what a suspended player, what that means is that the suspended player cannot enter an area or venue that is hosting a Konami sanctioned event. Yep. So let's say like you get suspended, you're like, okay, you know, it happened, I'm gonna go back to playing Magic. And let's say your local tournament store hosts Magic events and Yu-Gi-Oh at the same time. You cannot be in the same building while that Yu-Gi-Oh event is going on.
Yeah, and that's a big problem a lot of people run into.
Yeah. And then, like, you know, let's just go over some of the other things that, you know, warrant a UC severe. One of the biggest ones, you know, there's obviously, you know, pretty basic stuff. Like physical threats or verbal threats, property damage, theft, larceny, all those kind of things. Another big one, however, is what is called collusion, which I kind of touched on before, but it is attempting to basically you're match fixing. You're saying, hey, I want this mat. Could I, like, let's say you're sitting down with somebody. They say, hey, we're playing for this mat. I really want it. Could you let me win? And then I'll give you $20. Not allowed under any circumstances. Not allowed. Also, like, you know, you're getting really close to time. You don't want to have to look at your cards. You're really hungry. It's late at night. It's the last round. You just want it to be over with. Your opponent asks, hey, do you want to just roll dice? Again, not allowed.
Not allowed.
Can't do it. Don't do it. If somebody tries to convince you that it's okay, don't. And then this is one of the other things that I think we should bring up is if you're ever confused, if you're ever not sure, ask a judge, right? That's what we are there for at the event to do, is both to make sure the games proceed at a reasonable pace, make sure there's no problems that occur, but also we're there to educate and inform. And if you are asking like, hey, this person asked me to roll dice for the game, I believe that's it. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I want to know if that's okay. The judge can tell you. If you enter a venue and say, hey, I have some cards that I maybe want to sell, can I sell them here? Normally the judge will tell you yes or no. And there's a lot of similar things with like, mats. You know, like some people will bring mats that they bought through a third party that are slightly more non-PG-13.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, I'm trying to say it the nice way. They depict images that are not PG-13, and they show them to the judges, the head judge, whatever. They say, can I use this? The judge will say yes or no. If he says no, you need to switch out your sleeves, you need to switch out your mat, you need to just not use them, you need to not show them.
You can also just not play on mat with like giant titties on. That's another way to go.
That is true. So, always ask your tournament officials before you commit to doing something. Now, in my opinion, I don't think it will be like you ask, hey, is like if you go to an event, even just like a locals event, and you say, hey, can I sell cards? I believe I do not think any judge will disqualify you and remove you from the venue for simply asking, right? I think they'd rather you ask and be like, hey, I'm being upfront. I just want to know, is this okay? If it's not okay, I won't do it. They would much rather have you do that than have to deal with the DQ papers, the Konami investigations, all that stuff.
I can say that much, yeah.
I have never been part of a Konami investigation. However, I have been told that it is quite a lot of work and quite a big headache. So a lot of stores and head judges and everything don't want to have to deal with it if they can help it.
Yeah, for sure. It's just not worth the hassle for literally anyone involved. If you're not sure, just always ask. It really is that simple.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario, you're just gonna be told no. Yeah. Just like a slight head shake and like no, why?
Yeah. You might get a head shake, you might get some weird looks, you might even get like a maybe verbal scolding or something like that.
But it's a lot less. I'd rather go through that than be banned from entering my locals for 2 years.
Yeah, and now I will say, like, if you were disqualified, you were put on the suspended players list and all that stuff, and you believe it was wrong, it was either done maliciously or done like they were charging you with an infraction that you didn't commit, there is an appeal process. You will be told that. I have no idea what it entails. All I know is there are 2 famous examples of appeals that have gone through. I think, Tristan, you probably know them both. It is Billy Break and Triff Gaming. They were both, they both had things, they had infractions that were put against them. There's an investigation. They were put on the suspended players list. After the investigation, it was revealed that, it wasn't, that like things weren't the way they were. They were taken off the suspended players list after the appeal. So do yourself a favor. If it happens, just agree, go through the right channels, don't get mad, don't get upset. If it's really a mistake and you shouldn't be suspended, there's a way you can go about dealing with it. So, it's a children's trading card game, but at the end of the day, you still need to be an adult, you still need to be respectful. A lot of people are just doing their jobs. There's not a lot of people who are out to get you, but Konami's policies are very hard and fast, and as judges, we have to follow them. We can't. There's no room for negotiations or interpretations. The Konami policies are the way they are.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
In conclusion, don't tell people that you want to win the match, and I'll give you the win. That's like the big one. Don't sell cards, and all that stuff we talked about. It makes your life easier. Or if you are going to sell cards, sell them to the vendors.
Yep. So like I said, the Konami policy documents are posted online, and if you're ever not sure about something, pop it up and read it, ask a judge, ask any tournament official, and they'll tell you how it is, kind of thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. This was a bit more of a heavy topic than I like to cover, but I felt like, it was one of those things I wanted people to be able to reference and be able to learn from, be able to understand, because there are a lot of new players coming to the game from Master Duel after, the Tier 0 format. They're interested, but then they saw it was awful, so now they're getting back into it now that it's over, all those kind of things. There's plenty of players coming in, and we want this to be a resource and educational for them. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did enjoy, it would mean a lot if you could leave a like and maybe hit that subscribe button, all that kind of stuff. So have a good day, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.